Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Project Onward Artists at Home. I'm your host, Alex Oliver. I really appreciate you joining us. This time a little later and in the middle of the week. We just kind of work around everyone's schedules, my own, the artists, and we appreciate you being so flexible with us. Like most of the people who make Project Onward run so smoothly, I volunteer my time and do what I can when I can. Doesn't even begin to scratch the surface when compared to some of the work of the other amazing volunteers and the staff. But I just want to take a moment to just recognize all of them. I try to do that every show because as incredible as the artwork is, we'd have nowhere to display it, and they'd have nowhere to create it if it weren't for the incredible work that these people do. And on that note, we're going to get into today's interview. One of the cool things about doing this show is that we've made so many fans out of all of you, but also the artists are just getting really excited about it. And they kind of start to lobby for a position on the show, for their own segment. And it's really, really great. And of course, we want to feature everyone eventually. But one of the most persistent has been Allen McNair, who we're happy to welcome today, of course, because he's just such a unique talent and one of my personal favorite artists. And also poet, author, he does it all. Really a Renaissance man. He's only been with Project Onward for a little over a year, but he's created some really amazing work and really just various styles. He's done some really cool portrait work. He works with different materials. As I said, he writes a lot too, and that narrative element is really present in his work. So I'm really excited to welcome him here today so he can give us a little more insight. Here we go. Okay, it looks like Allen may not actually be online yet. So I'm going to go ahead and task Whitney with getting in touch with him. Thanks, Allie. Whitney bought me this shirt. She complimented it too just before we went live. That is a duck. So Whit, if you can hear me, go ahead and shoot Allen a text, and I'll just continue to exalt his work here while we wait, and do a few quick plugs. ProjectOnward.org and at Allen Frank McNair on Instagram. Both have some really amazing examples of his work. He was, like many of the other artists, brought to us by Thresholds, who I mentioned last time when I talked to Sherelle. I'm not sure if I gave them a proper shout out though, but you should absolutely visit thresholds.org because they're a local organization that just provide a wide array of services to people with developmental disabilities. And they do have a really fantastic art therapy program, but they've been really great about referring some of the artists to Project Onward, and they've all really thrived within our organization. So thresholds.org, you can find out more about them and how to support them. I encourage you to do that. Let me double check here real quick, see if Allen's on. Maybe experiencing some technical difficulties on his end, that's okay. All right, I think we're getting him on the phone. One of the really unique things about, Bill says Thresholds rocks. Yes, indeed they do. Just leading up to this interview, I've taken an opportunity to look at some of Allen's work, and he is one of the artists that I think is really always great when you task him with an idea for a specific show. He's done one for a show that's coming up, which you'll be hearing a lot about in the very near future. He did some really incredible work for the Chicago Nature Preserve, and you can see examples of that on his Instagram. Anytime there's like a specific theme, he's got this really great COVID-19 piece that I'm just blown away by. We'll of course talk about all this in great detail when we do finally get him online. But these are all things that really, if you have a moment, you should take a quick look at, just so you have an idea of what we're going to be getting into here. His work is for sale on projectonward.org. And he has a book as well that, if I'm not mistaken, is also for sale on Amazon. We'll talk more about that. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to see if he's here. Not quite. I do think we got in touch with him. There he is. All right, stand by, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, Alan. How are you?
I panicked.
You what?
I panicked.
You panicked. Hey, that's all right. I work okay under pressure.
Good.
Thankfully, you've got a lot of. I could talk about your work all day, so it was really no problem. I was able to kill some time.
Good. Is there a possibility to get a recording of this for myself?
Well, absolutely. Yeah, we'll archive it. It'll be on YouTube and on Instagram, and we'll definitely send it to you.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, but it'll be streaming online too, so you can share it with whoever you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. How are you today? Thank you for joining us.
I'm doing great. I'm really excited about this interview.
Oh, fantastic. So am I. I think everybody is. We've really been looking forward to this one.
Yeah, good.
You mentioned before you got online that you've been kind of lobbying for a spot on the show, and we, of course, we're really looking forward to having you. I'm glad we could finally work it out.
Yeah. Here's my easel over here.
Wonderful. Can we go in a little closer? Can you show us what you're working on?
This is something that I finished.
I was just looking at that one. That is the car salesman, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I want to get into your story and your background a little bit. While we're on the topic, let's go ahead and talk about your latest piece here, because that one really caught my eye. Tell us who those characters are in that piece.
Princess Leia and Simon Legree. Princess Leia is from Star Wars, and Simon Legree, which kind of dates me because not everybody knows that character, is from Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Right. I read that in your description on Instagram. I'm not I know of the story, but I'm not familiar with that character specifically. Can you tell us why you thought they might work together in this piece?
Okay. Because they represent the light and dark forces of human character.
I noticed that's kind of present in a lot of your work. It seems to be a lot of parallels between light and dark, or often the themes are kind of like two sides of the same coin. You usually have two kind of opposing figures, and they do kind of represent different themes for you, don't they? And they're all kind of present in your dreams that you just kind of put on the canvas.
Yeah. I did this thing. I had a dream in 1965, and it was translated into a book like 40 years later. I Dream of Amaranth. And that's about a woman that came to our world 200 years in the future and fell in love with a man from our planet. And they had certain adventures together. So,
yeah, there you are. Sorry, I was having a little trouble seeing your face. But this is your, what was it, Dreams of Amaranth?
I Dream of Amaranth.
A Dream of Amaranth. This is your self-published novel, an epic poem, that is.
Yes.
And a lot of your work is based on this, right?
Yeah, I did like 50 illustrations to complement the book.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about the inspiration behind this book. It just came to you in a dream?
Yeah, in 1992, I started writing poetry, and I decided I wanted to write a long story in poetry.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found when I was interviewed about this book is that this character was homeless, as I was homeless in 1990. So there are a lot of parallels in my life to the dream that I had back in '65.
Did it come out kind of fully formed when you woke up?
So
that's it, or did you kind of just and it just kind of started to come out of you? Did you already know?
well, yeah, it was fully formed. I had the dream where the world suffered a nuclear holocaust, and then 200 years later, it healed itself. And so I had this dream that this woman came to our planet and contracted an illness and passed away. So when I started writing the poem, I said, there's more to the story than just her passing. There's somebody who engineered that and actually plotted against her, because that person of darkness wanted to rule mankind, and she, Amaresh, would serve mankind rather than rule.
That sounds pretty epic indeed. I don't want you to really feel like you have to give any spoilers, because I want to read the book. I mean, but it sounds pretty amazing, and the way you've kind of transposed it into your visual art is really exciting, because, like you said, it's based on a dream, and all of your qualities. Sometimes we see familiar figures in your work, like in the case of the car salesman, but you kind of all take them, put them in kind of unusual, unexpected circumstances.
I thought of this thing about this car salesman. I said it can't be very interesting just to have two plain characters represented in the piece. But what I was looking for was doing a technique of repetitive imagery, which is something that's quite common in my work as well, as to bring my qualities of my characters.
Yeah, fantastic. And I know this is for a show that's coming up for Project Onward that's sort of part of the theme, or this repetition. I won't, but I guess Simon Legree, and again, you'll have to forgive me, I'm not really familiar with the character, but is he kind of trying to swindle Princess Leia here? Because he looks like a bit of a shifty guy. I think we may be losing Alan here. And he's gone. All right. Wow. Well, already a lot of information to digest there. What did I tell you? It just comes out of him. It's really pretty amazing. I couldn't imagine writing that book and then basing a whole series of art along it. Here we go. He's back online.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Okay, so I wanted to look at something here, because I remember one of the things that they did with one interview was they had this guy who sing a few songs.
Yeah, that's right, Louis DeMarco.
And I'm looking for a poem called "From Checkered Cloth."
Let's recite some poetry for us.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, let's talk a little bit more first, and then we'll get to that, because I would definitely.
Sure. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, but I mean, you can certainly look for it in the meantime. But I definitely want to talk more about your work, your poetry, your writing, and of course your art. But first, let's go back a little and just talk about your beginning with art, and what inspired you, if you recall. When did you begin making art?
I started in my adult life when at the same time I did my poetry, I wanted to illustrate it. So I taught myself how to do my own art. And what happened was, when I would write poetry, people would say, I really can see what you're doing. And so they asked me to show them more about my work, and I thought, well, the best thing to do is to do it in markers.
Sure. Yeah, you do use a lot of color to express your work, so I can see how the markers really lend itself to that.
Yeah, I tried different mediums, but I found that markers was the neatest way in which to express myself. It was clean, it was sharp, it was bright, it was beautiful, and when I did pencils, I felt that they needed sharpening too often.
And then that would be a bit frustrating after a while.
And then with crayons, I found that it was really messy. You know, my hands would get very dirty, and I would touch other surfaces, and they would get dirty, and so I didn't like crayons too much.
So you consider yourself a poet first, really. You really just kind of started exploring art as a way to expound on your poetry and create.
Right.
But you never really explored visual art as a kid? It wasn't something that came along until your adult life?
Yeah, I did some art, but mostly I would do triangular fishes or sharks.
So what inspired you to start writing poetry? Was that something you did as a kid?
What happened was when I wrote something, it was really long and lengthy, and they said, well, you know, you got to sharpen the words and kind of dissect it so that it would be more concise. And so I thought poetry is a perfect avenue for concise writing.
Mm-hmm. Wow, no, that's really incredible. And it definitely seems like the words do just kind of flow out of you. I mean, you're inspired by these dreams that you have, and you just have to express them in any way that you can. Do you find that it's difficult to kind of reel it in sometimes, or decide when something's done, or do you just kind of keep exploring these themes as long as it feels right?
Pretty much the second thing, that explore them as much as they feel right, and then it comes to me that this is done when it's done.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a very intuitive way of doing things, which is something that a lot of the artists in Project Onward excel at. But I want to talk a little bit about another one of your recent pieces that is very topical right now. This really amazing COVID-19 piece that you did, which I believe is the Attack of the COVID-19.
Yes, that's the original title.
Excellent. Well, this one's on your Instagram and on projectonward.org. Is currently for sale. And can you tell us a little bit about what it's been like during the pandemic, making art, finding inspiration, and then producing a piece based on the coronavirus?
Well, one of the things is that I worked at a grocery store so I can get out of my house. And getting out of my house, I feel that things flow more naturally than if I were sitting in the house wondering, when can I get out? What can I do? And so what part of the inspiration for COVID-19 was this Portuguese artist based in London, Manuel Bonaventura.
Mm-hmm.
And so his characters are larger than life in his drawings. So they'll be like, at first I did the initial piece, the figure was smaller than the trees, but then I realized that that's not the way Bonifacio does his work. He doesn't go for perspective. He goes for just the immediate image that he wants to really hit his audience with. So I enlarged the image in the second version of it, the current one that you see, so that it would be larger than trees.
So yeah, he kind of took on, he or she, I guess, it's really up for debate if you're going to kind of anthropomorphize a virus and sort of give it this human form. But I think that is what this is supposed to represent. Is that right?
It's a character that was transformed by the infusion of the virus.
I see. So we've got, and again, I really encourage everyone to go look at this now, if you can. You've got, again, these two shapes that I guess represent the person who was infected by it.
Right,
And
exactly.
very interesting. Now, what is it? I mean, obviously it's split, but again, you have all of these colors, these bright colors.
Yeah.
The red sky does seem a little ominous, but I mean, does this kind of express your fear of the virus, or what is it? How is it that it makes
No,
you?
it's more of a national fear, an international fear. So the red sky represents danger.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the piece right here.
Oh, fantastic. That's helpful. Thank you. Yeah, that's so. Yeah.
So I tried to show it as best I could.
Well, let's continue with your story a little bit in your background. Can you tell us a little bit about your time at Thresholds and how that led to getting involved with Project Onward?
Yeah, in Thresholds they have a creative arts group there, an open art studio. And among the people that come to the open art studio is James Hall. And he started talking about Project Onward, so I was intrigued. But I was also kind of scared because they do poetry slams, and I don't know that I could do something as well executed in the speed that they do. So I was hesitant to join Project Onward, but then I said, I got such a volume of work, somebody's got to see it. Somebody has to give it a broad audience. So when James talked about Project Onward, it sounded like the perfect avenue for promoting and selling my work. So I joined in late December, and I had an interview with Robin and Whitney. And what happened was after they looked at my work, they asked me quite plainly and directly, Alan, what took you so long?
That's a fair question. I mean, you've got such an amazing body of work. You fit right in. Yet you've only been there for about a year. Is that right?
Year and a half, yeah.
Year and a half. Excellent. And are you a Chicago native? Were you born and raised?
Yeah. I was born in Highland Park, Michigan, but when I was 3 years old, I moved to Hyde Park with my parents because I couldn't at 3 years old move by myself.
How do you feel like the city has influenced you? What do you think of Chicago? And it's, I mean, you did a really incredible, as I said earlier, piece for the Nature Show, the Woodland Stream, which is on your Instagram right now. And Chicago's a unique place in that it's very, very urban, but it also has, you know, if you go a few miles in any direction, you are quickly reminded that you're still in the Midwest, and it's a very sort of biodiverse part of the country.
Yeah, and the trees there represent the influence of the city because it's not a very pretty scene of trees.
Right. I see. I never really caught on to that before, but you're right. They all, they're all bare. It does appear to be. Is it nighttime in this piece? I mean, it kind of looks like that sun or the moon. It could be either one, but there's kind of like a dim sort of quality to it. So is this kind of a comment on how, you know, industrialization and like humans have kind of taken its toll on our natural surroundings? I think we might.
It went on, you know, that it was a bizarre scene because it was a, you know, forest amongst the city. Here is the piece.
It is. Look at that. Yeah, that's fantastic. Wow, thank you for giving me a little more insight on that one. Well, let's talk about your writing a little more. We had another question from Nancy in there earlier. Wanted to know something about your poetry. Let me scroll back up. She wants to know who your favorite poet is, or how do you relate in poetry, or who do you relate to? Excuse me.
There's not really the closest inspiration that I have is Edgar Allan Poe. Like he wrote The Raven.
Yeah, of course. Tell Heart.
Yeah, and so his stuff is always bizarre and otherworldly and has a twist at the end. So what happens is that my friends who hear my poetry say, Alan, you talk about these things that seem so natural and comfortable, and then you hit us with something that's incredibly dense.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. It's always nice to have that kind of twist ending. I would definitely, I mean, some of your best work, I think, is the stuff that's inspired by your poetry. And
Yes.
as we've already discussed, I mean, there are different ways to interpret it, and there are a lot of twists and turns just within a single piece sometimes. I think you have, what is From Checkered Cloth? Can you tell me about that? That's another book of yours, isn't it?
Yes, it's a collection of poetry, 1990 through the present. And it's based on this poem that was my first adult literary work, which I performed on stage, of all things. So that was the Threshold Steered Arts Project.
Oh, I see. Fantastic.
So do you mind if I read it? It's very short.
Please, go right ahead.
Okay. The flower opens to greet the sun's golden food as it touches her delicate fingers of red. The neighbors blush in pink hues, blossom in bold velvet blues, ignite in yellow flame shining. From red checkered cloth, a honey blonde head looks up. Her blue eyes drink in these colors, cheek held against chilled glass. She smiles and mimics a bunny's wrinkling nose. Her merry laugh jiggles pink lemonade and ice. Her hand reaches back to find his. She feels close to the view and him. Sky and earth move for her with their touch. Her drink tastes as sweet as the day. He watches the way she watches the scene. His thoughts move in the lazy way the clouds wander by. So you can see from just the first image of a flower, then somebody observing a flower, somebody observing a person observing a flower, that it takes you further distance away, larger perspective of what you're seeing in the poem. And this is influenced by experience I had at the Museum of Science and Industry, where they had a film called Powers of 10, which showed a park scene, then the park in the middle of the city, then the city in the middle of the state, and the state in the middle of the nation, and further and further perspectives until finally you saw the furthest part of the galaxy. Then they would zoom in and go in and look for the minute levels of reality within the scene, such as the molecules and atoms.
Excellent. Well, now you kind of touched on a theme there that I actually like to talk about because it reminds me of one of your other pieces that I'm looking at on your Instagram right now, and that is Your Face in Candlelight, which is, again, kind of explores the theme of someone observing someone else and not necessarily not necessarily with their knowledge.
Yeah.
Your Face in Candlelight says it's based on a poem by the same name. Is this one of your poems?
Yeah, it's one of my poems. Yeah.
So what's the story there? I'll describe it for everyone unless you have it handy. You've done pretty good at producing all these pieces so far.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful woman imagined by a young man, and then you post the quote to me. Tell us a little bit about the history behind this piece.
Well, I was thinking, that this guy had this very romantic notion of this person he was observing, but he was once removed from that person. And so you feel like he's coming closer to her in the poem, but at the end of the poem, you see that he's observing her from a distance.
Yeah. Oh, it's really amazing. And it also kind of explores, I want to just take a quick moment to quote something from your bio on projectonward.org. kind of explores another one of your favorite themes, which is both the inner and outer beauty of all women.
Yeah.
Feminine figures in a lot of your pieces, and that's clearly something that inspires you a lot. And reminds me, not unlike one of our other favorite artist project owner, Mr. Louis DeMarco. In fact, you have a piece called Ladies Man, which I really enjoy, and Louis himself is a perfect example of a ladies' man. I want to talk a little bit more about your experience now at Project Onward.
Yeah.
You've been here for a year and a half, as you said. You've done a lot of amazing work. But I'd like to know if there's a particular memory that sticks out. If there's something, an experience you had there that maybe that you'd like to talk about.
Well, I've been working, when I first started with Project Onward, I'd been working on pieces that I had already done work on. And I couldn't figure out what inspiration I could have to do something. But then they said, well, Alan, you need to work with something that has more detail. And so at first I was saying, what the heck can I do? But then it came to me, boundless dream, that I could create figures of different dimensions of reality, such as, again, the theme goes back to Powers of 10, that I had a dream where I found myself unified with everything I saw. And everything I saw was more and more expansive and more encompassed of the reality of life. So that experience said, okay, I finally arrived at Project Onward because I've done something original.
Excellent. It sounds like you get a lot of inspiration from working with the other artists and with the staff and volunteers at Project Onward. Are you open to suggestions? It really sounds like you are, and that you actually kind of thrive on that.
Yeah, what I do is I listen to people, then I take a step back and say, what can I do? And then it comes to me what I can do. And it's basically because I do this thing called transcendental meditation that expands the mind and relaxes the mind to be more productive and creative.
Fantastic. That brings me to another question I have about a more recent piece, and that is the karma of flight. You mentioned meditation, and a good example of two people practicing transcendental meditation and actually levitating in the process.
Yes.
You consider yourself an individual and kind of in, is your third eye open, so to speak?
Yeah. I have found that within the meditation, I believe, had experiences of being touched by God. And that's what I conclude in Boundless Dream, is that this experience brings me closer to God.
Yeah, this dream that you had that inspired so much of your poetry and so much of your artwork, do you feel like that was really kind of a turning point for you creatively? Was that sort of the spark that just sort of lit the fire of this period of creativity for you? Before that, did you write a lot? Did you ever?
Yeah, when I was in grade school, I got in trouble with other students and got into fights. And then I was taken under the wing by a principal of the school, and he, here's your facing candlelight, but he discovered that, I really had quite an imagination, and he thought that it'd be best served if I were to write. And so I did write. But I find that that's a natural thing that's in the genes of the McNair family. My sister is a great writing teacher, has published 3 books. My father published 2 books. My mother was a travel writer. And my older half-brother was an editor of a magazine and a reporter before that in Monticello. So he did a lot of writing.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. It sounds like you're pretty predisposed to this kind of creativity. Whitney brings up a good question. Another thing that we'll notice in a lot of your pieces are that a lot of the figures have these see-through clothes on. And I know that there's a story behind that. Could you tell us about it?
Yeah. Do you remember the civilization of Greece?
I'm familiar with it.
Okay, and did you not see scenes of men walking the street without clothes?
Sure.
And that men loved other men
Mm-hmm.
openly, not, behind closed doors. So I thought this was a liberated society that was lost in history. And I thought, what greater liberated society would there be than this world 200 years in the future, where people could wear clothes and they wouldn't harbor negative thoughts about the revealing nature of those clothes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So that's just a larger commentary on just the idea of freedom and liberation and tolerance, and it's so beautiful to describe it that way. That's
Yeah,
really
it's acceptance and inclusion.
I'm always so stunned by the ideas that you and the other artists have about sexuality and identity and race and just all of the you so open-minded, and the way you express it through your work is really, really stunning. And the fact that you're able to convey these really important messages, but do it in a way that kind of leaves it open to interpretation is just so spectacular. And I really, really, really enjoy it, Alan.
Thank you very much.
Nancy makes a good point. You were a child of the 60s, which was a pretty liberated time. I mean, I can't think of another decade that can consider where the decade started and where it ended. Just the culture all over the world just really was unrecognizable by the end of the 60s. What was it like for you growing up during that time?
Well, I was pretty much followed the norm. I remember one time we picked up a hitchhiker that was going to a rock concert, and I said to my brother, "Why don't we go?" My brother said, "No, we got to go to work." And lo and behold, as I thought about it and reflected on it, this guy was going to Woodstock.
Wow, that's incredible. But you didn't go. You went to work instead.
Yeah, but then I did go later on. My brother and I did go to a couple of outdoor concerts.
Yeah,
we stayed for a few days.
I'm sure Woodstock was amazing, but what they always say is if you remember it, you weren't really there. So
yeah.
You may not be able to recall it that well now, anyway. Whitney points out that you're a Star Trek fan. That's pretty fantastic.
Yeah. In this thing called social distancing, I used this character, a Gorn from Star Trek.
Oh, fantastic!
As one, and these are one of three characters in line at a supermarket.
Gorn, of course, is the lizard monster that Kirk famously fought in the original series.
Yeah. And so here's the picture.
Can you bring us down just a little? Couldn't quite see it there. There it is. Wonderful. I gotta say that looks just about as realistic as the costume did in that episode so long ago.
Yeah. And the other character is Little Red Riding Hood.
Wow. Again, you're just bringing these characters from wildly different stories together into a piece. That's such an imaginative thing to do. Can you tell us what inspired you to include Little Red Riding Hood and this character from Star Trek in the same piece?
Okay, well, Little Red Riding Hood is again a representation of innocence and light. Mm-hmm. And Gorn is threatening, dangerous, and really odd. So I was thinking these two different characters would be interesting to juxtapose in the piece. Then I choose an ordinary person with headphones as the third character.
Yeah. So you're kind of a substitute for the big bad wolf there, I guess, huh?
Yeah, somebody thought it was the big bad wolf, but it isn't. It's Gorn.
love it. I love it. And they are in the supermarket, and you mentioned that you work in a supermarket.
Yes.
These scenes while
What?
at work,
What's that?
is this kind of similar to a scene you would witness at work? These
Yeah.
sports.
Because if it might not be clear, but they have their masks, but they're not wearing them. And so that's a common thing. When you go into an establishment, you're supposed to wear a mask, and it's been rough for some people. In fact, unfortunately, in the darkest experience, one guy was shot because he asked this person to put a mask on.
Well, yeah, that's hopefully we don't see those situations escalating to that degree. But I should point out, as someone who also works in the service industry, please don't be a jerk. Wear your mask when you go into these. People like Allen are working hard and risking their safety to try to bring the world back to something resembling normal. So show a little respect, okay? And Allen, I really appreciate the work that you do. That's really fantastic. I know that the grocery biz is a lot of hard work.
Yes, and I'm trying to become a cashier, and it's a real struggle to become a cashier.
Yeah, well, good luck. Good luck. I'm sure. I mean, you got to have personality to be a cashier. I think that's important. You got it.
Right.
Well, what's it like? What's it been like otherwise during the pandemic? Are you? I mean, it's great that you have an opportunity to get out of the house, but when you are at home, do you find that it's hard to find inspiration, or have you been working just as much as you were before?
I think just as much. I find that there's other pieces more adult in nature that I do. So I got a prolific body of work, not all of which is appropriate for viewers. So I just crank them out. I just decide to do something and generate the piece.
That's excellent. Well, I've been asking everyone what sort of advice they have for other artists who may not be having such an easy time finding that inspiration. What would you tell someone who's struggling to pick up their paintbrush or their marker right now?
I would ask them to believe in themselves first. And I would ask them to just take that brush and move. Because it's just so much fun that you'd be really missing out when you don't exercise that gift that you have.
Sure, and once you get the momentum going, it's a lot easier to just keep.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Great advice, Alan. Well, I'm about out of questions, but I do want to take a moment to turn it over to our viewers and see if they have any questions for you, because we've covered a lot, and I'm sure. Looks like Robin just jumped on too. Hi, Robin. We've gone over a lot with Alan here, but if anyone has any questions, now's the time. And Alan, if you have anything else that you'd like to add, or if there's any more work that you could show us.
Yeah, I want to show you the levitation piece that you mentioned.
Oh, fantastic.
And there's a phrase in the Bhagavad Gita, which is a Bible of Hindu scripture.
I'm sorry. We had a little. Can you just bring the camera down a little lower? We were having a little trouble seeing it. There it is. Fantastic.
So it says Yoga Sta Kuru Karmani, which translates to be establishing being, perform action. So I thought establishing being in this instance was the practice of meditation, and then perform action was the levitation. And we do meditation, not for the experience of meditation itself, which is very charming, but we do it in order to be more productive and more creative. We're looking for the outside benefits of the meditation, not so much the experience of it.
Now, Ella, do you find that, do you typically like to meditate before you start making art? Does that help you kind of get into that creative zone?
Well, I meditate twice daily. So I have a regular routine.
Uh-huh.
But I find that I've established being so well in my mind that when a person challenges me, then I just go into the meditation mode and just start acting.
How did you discover meditation? Did you just kind of happen upon it on your own, or did someone introduce you to it?
It was during the 60s,
Mm-hmm.
1969 to be exact, that I read a book called Science of Being, An Art of Living. And it's by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And he described it so beautifully that when he said, you can't learn this from the book, even the one I've written, I said, okay, I'm going to find out how to learn it. And so within a year, I became a meditator.
Wow. Well, Jay White Sue just asked if you meditate at the same time every day.
Pretty much, usually around 4 or 5 in the morning and 4 or 5 in the evening.
So, what is your creative process like? What do you like to do when you're sitting down to work on some art? Is there what kind of environment do you like to work in?
Well, I mostly like to work in a quiet environment,
Mm-hmm.
but I do sometimes play music. And I just ask myself, what do I want to create today? And then the answer comes. But a lot of my inspiration is my writing. If I hadn't been writing, I wouldn't be able to take up a brush and pen and do some of the work that I've done. Here's another piece that I have.
Oh, that's really cool.
And then I did a more natural piece because somebody said that looked rather bizarre. So I did this one.
Wow.
Now that character is pasted on because I couldn't possibly do the detail of that character in that size myself, doing the piece as a whole. And this is one of my larger pieces.
Uh-huh. Let's see. So who is that that we're seeing in that picture?
A woman named Rachel that I know from Thresholds.
I was curious about that. If some of these people, obviously you've got your Princess Leia's and your Little Red Riding Hoods, but if these other people are people from your actual life, do you try to incorporate them into your work?
Yeah, because it's natural for my writing to do that same thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I did a poem called Fire and Ice, which is about Rachel herself.
Can we see that piece one more time? Someone's asking if we can take another look at it. That's wonderful. Wow. I'm gonna scroll back up here and because we had a few other questions thrown at us while you were explaining that. WWW Purple asks, if you designed your own mask, what would be on it? That's a very good question. And I should point out real quick, there are a lot of great masks for sale on projectonward.org that do feature a lot of original art from our artists. But what do you think you would put on your mask?
Well, those two pieces represent what I will want on my mask because I was really charmed and flattered when they decided to say something about COVID-19 and Project Onward's response, and they used that picture of that woman on the mask. Mm-hmm. And that's my character, Amareth. I won't say anything more about that.
Okay. Well, again, everyone can buy your book if they want to learn a little bit more about Amareth. Robin asked if we talked about Electric Dreams. I don't think we talked about that. What's Electric Dreams?
Electric Dreams is, my title for it was, Do Robots Dream of Living Creatures? Mm-hmm. And what it was is that we were doing a tribute to a fellow former artist at Project Onward, Wortham. And we would use objects that he commonly would work with in his art and do our own piece interpreting those images. So I decided to create, originally I was going to go with R2-D2, but I can't because that's a copyrighted character. So I've created my own robot, and I thought, what would he want out of life, as a growing, evolving person, as a robot? And he would want love. And what greater love than a pet for its master? So the robot tamed a feral cat, and the
I think we may have lost you.
The cat fell in love with the robot for the taming of the cat.
Yeah. That's really amazing. Whitney did just point out that that's kind of similar to Data on Star Trek: The Next Generation, who of course is an android and has a pet cat. Was that part of the inspiration for you?
It might have been a subliminal part. It wasn't a subconscious part. It wasn't a real part that I thought of, intentionally.
Sometimes there might be. Is Philip K. Dick someone that you're a fan of? It definitely sounds.
His book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, was turned into a movie called Blade Runner, which fascinated me. I thought it was very well crafted, very exciting, and moving piece.
Just a big fan of the sci-fi genre in general, it sounds like.
Yeah, my inspiration is science fiction and graphic novels.
Mm-hmm.
My artists are Bob Kane, Kurt Swan, Stan Lee, not Picasso, Degas, Cezanne.
Fantastic. I can appreciate that, certainly. You did also mention one of your pieces before was called Fire and Ice, which, of course, conjures up images of Game of Thrones. And R. Martin, is that another author that you're a fan of?
Yeah, I've not read his books, but I've, seen a few scenes from Games of Thrones, and I've, there's another piece, I can't remember now, but of similar ilk of a world evolving and repeating itself, but it was a medieval scene, medieval world like the Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
But the other inspiration I have is called The Dragon Riders of Pern. And that is by Anne McCaffrey. And these Dragon Riders were initially the colony of Earthlings on the planet Pern. And they befriended dragons. And so every once in a while, these things called thread would come down the sky invading Pern. And they had to burn the threads away, otherwise the threads would burn them. So they harnessed the fire-breathing qualities of the dragons to destroy the thread.
Mm-hmm. Another epic tale out of the mind of Allen McNair, right there. Well, Alan, unfortunately, I have to wrap things up pretty soon because I learned the hard way in a previous interview that Instagram will boot us after an hour. But yes, I could talk to you all night about this stuff. I mean, you're such a creative individual, and you work across so many mediums, and the creativity just pours out of you. It's amazing. So real quick, I want to take an opportunity to plug everything one more time, starting with your Instagram, which is at Allen Frank McNair. That's Allen spelled A-L-L-E-N. ProjectOnward.org, of course, has a lot of great examples of your work. You have your book that you self-published, which I think is for sale on Amazon. Is that right?
Yes, that and From Checker Cloth are both on sale at Amazon.
Fantastic. Well, check all of that stuff out and do whatever you can to support Alan and the other artists in their creative endeavors, because as you can see, they're never finished. They've always got cool stuff that they want to express, and I know I'm not alone in expressing my appreciation for it.
I want to thank a particular donor for having provided us a relief fund.
Yes,
money for having been away from the studio.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to say thank you, Mr. Donor. I appreciate your assisting us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's incredible. We do not take that sort of thing for granted. Do not know how much we appreciate all your hard work, and can't wait to get all the artists back into the studio as soon as safely possible. And just a reminder that if you're itching to get in there and look at, maybe buy some work, you can right now by appointment only, and you can email or call Project Onward to set that up. They'd be happy to do it in the very near future. Alan, thank you again for joining us. I hope you had as much fun as I did. Please keep up the good work. Stay safe at home and at work, and we'll see you again very soon, okay?
Thanks a lot, Alex.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for watching. I'm Alex Oliver. This has been Project Onward, Artists at Home. We'll see you next time.